we never, as a society, as a community, really develop our own complex narrative as to how do we really develop as a country. We pushed a lot of people into graduate schemes, which is good, but we never really thought that the economy also needs to become complex.
Yeah, complex.
Politics should not, in the electoral cycles, always just bring the local, standard, plain vanilla electoral promises.
Yeah.
When budget time comes, they were basically seeing you as a component of people that are looking after animals. Right?
Hello everyone. Welcome back to yet another episode of the SAS Knowledge Repository. This is a podcast where we only bring you good news. And in studio today, I'm joined, I like to call him the good doctor, Dr. Michael Nokokure Humavindu. He is the ED of Finance. Doctor, welcome.
Thank you so much, Lazarus, and thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. And I think just to I think for the sake of our listeners, it's always nicer to give a bit of background of why we, I think, specifically wanted to have a conversation with you. I've been looking forward to this for the longest time, particularly because, and that's also partly why I call you the good doctor. I think the work that you've done, especially in public policy, has been quite impressive. But I'd like to do just a bit of a bio. And please do correct me again if the bio is not what you think it is. Maybe it's been updated. But Dr. Humavindu Nokokure, before he joined the Ministry of Finance, was the ED at the National Planning Commission. Before then, he held the role of a Deputy Executive Director within the Ministry of Industrialisation and Trade, which now has changed to, which is now split now to trade and to the industrialization part. He also served as the Director of Economics and Research with the Namibian Competition Commission, and also as a portfolio manager at the Development Bank of Namibia. His expertise includes strategy development, ESG, and sustainability, development finance, natural resource economics, and corporate governance. And Dr. Humavindu holds a PhD in economics from Umeå University in Sweden, a master's in finance and investments from Durham University in the UK, and another MA in economics from Stellenbosch in South Africa. I think what I particularly like, and I like to call him the good doctor, is largely related to his involvement into initiatives like the Growth at Home strategy under the Ministry then of Industrialisation and Trade, which has been instrumental in shaping frameworks for manufacturing, trade, and regional value chains. He also served on several boards, including NAST, Agribank, Namdeb Holdings, Debmarine Namibia, and also chaired the Environment Economics Network of Namibia. And I think one of your most cited works is the work that you've done with other researchers from the World Bank, with that particular research titled "Benefits to Local Communities from Community Conservancies in Namibia." That was an assessment that you did. And I was particularly, I only got the chance to to read that particular research as we were preparing, but that research indicated a very starking result for me in that conservancies, and correct me here, it was an indication that conservancies, at least the way they were set up, they were almost pro-poor, which is almost unbelievable, I think, in the way we are also looking at them. But I think, Dr. Humavindu, thank you so much for joining us today. And I think the discussion really today is just about how do we, seeing that you very well accomplished in all that you've done, how, and as a researcher, how do we turn the research that researchers are doing, particularly into either tangible products and also enforceable policies? But I think the first question really is, we must always say at the beginning, what really inspired you, I think, firstly as a researcher, and also what inspired you to translate your research work into, then shifting it into policy?
No, thank you very much. Nothing to add to the biography, definitely. You know, some of us always grew up, or we were born into poverty. You know, so poverty is always inspiring in such a way that it makes you an inquisitive mind as to why are we in this state. And if you hang on to that instead of looking for short-term solutions, that leads to illicit behavior, you sort of start going through your educational phase by having a very, very inspired outlook to say, I need to get to the next stage in order for me to be able to remove the shackles of poverty and improve the lives of, obviously your household, but, some of us also grew up in a very multidimensional urban areas like Soweto, which is now under the John Padeni constituency. So you had all various types of tribes, and we were exposed to various parents that basically then raised your inquisitivity. And as you went through high school, you started also realizing as to, in high school, I really wanted to understand psychology. I really wanted to be a psychologist because I also saw mental health cases in our communities. But then by university, I've set up my mind on solving societal problems. And that really speaks to economics, and that really sort of inspires you to become more of an inquiry person, because research is about inquiry. That's really what it is. Seek knowledge in order to solve societal problems or community problems. Yeah, in short.
Okay, good. And I like what you said, that, which is a very interesting view, that poverty almost starts you to try and inquire how can you particularly solve the problems that you have around you. And then I think, obviously, in you going through high school, that's also very interesting, that you wanted to do psychology. No one would ever think that Dr. Humavindu would have wanted to start off doing a psychology course. But I think then from that, obviously your journey into then research and public policy, what would you say is the missing link, I think, between what we have as policy, what we have as, policy on one side and also research on one side? Is that always that our policies that we have, either in government, doesn't have to be government policy, or can even be private sector policy, are they always mostly informed by research? Or is it just somebody thinking, and this is something nice to have, and then we need to have it implemented?
It's far deeper. Our society was a very much, and has still been a very much enclave society, and also an economy. And when you are that enclave, your whole setup, institutionally, but also laterally in terms of thinking and developing yourself, is very linear. It's like, let me just go to the economics. If I need to start a business, it's most likely probably just for me to get some franchise ownership or something from South Africa especially, and start the shop without necessarily identifying the need of why I'm doing this, right? And that's also the same when it comes to community problems. We always tended to rely on the fact that as long as there is bread on the table from South Africa, we are fine.
Survival.
Yeah. So we never, as a society, as a community, really develop our own complex narrative as to how do we really develop as a country. Because if you start looking in terms of a complex narrative around your own self-development as a person, as an individual, as a community, as a country within a region, it becomes very, very limiting for you to value research, right? But as we continue to grow now, and as we continue also to wean ourselves from the dependency ratio that we have been having, and as we start seeing a lot of complex narratives developing themselves, the oil and gas sector, the green industrialization sector, mental health issues that are becoming extremely paramount, a lack of social workers that are, if you look into your graduate profiles, all of them get taken up. So we were always thinking of linearity. And that's also how we are ending up with a lot of, we pushed a lot of people into graduate schemes, which is good, but we never really thought that the economy also needs to become complex.
Yeah, complex.
So, and that's simply because, in my view, the research segment was not extremely developed. And that is why, if you look into advanced economies, or those economies that manage to become advanced in this short space of time, they've put a lot of emphasis on R&D. China is one good example. And recently I was in Ethiopia, and what I saw in Ethiopia in 2021 and what I'm seeing in Ethiopia now, and when you actually go back in terms of how did they strategize around this, they did a lot of research, whether it is on the airline economics, whether it is in the water sector now that they're building that mega dam, because they are trying to become a complex society that is able to develop. And they've emphasized a lot of funding in their research components. So it's linearity that really that is really still afflicting us. And that's also how during COVID-19 we were basically just asking South Africa to give us the medicine, you know, because our whole setup is just linearity, not complex. Yeah.
Great. I think there's nothing really to there's nothing to even add to that. I think and it reminds me of a conversation I think we once had with one of my cousins. He was studying then at NEMT. And I'd asked him, okay, fine, you're being taught how to put together things, how to service machines, but are the professors and the teachers at least teaching you, okay, this particular component, you can make it this way. If the machine breaks down, you have to wait for somebody coming from outside. Can you not just, as it, our setup only setup that we need to service these things, never actually moving into producing some of these components that we're using in the local economy. But yeah, I think linearity is really is an issue that I think we as a country are faced with. Let's bring in a little bit of politics, right? How do we then obviously balance the political realities that we have as a country into ensuring that they lean more towards the research part?
Yeah, now politics is very important because it helps us to drive our growth trajectory as the electoral cycles come through. But what is important with politics is that you need politics to drive the futuristic agenda. You know, nowadays, the whole world is looking in terms of, you know, designing the future. So, be as it may, I think our last population policy that really looks out in terms of how we evolve was possibly done in 2004, 2007. But look around those countries that I've mentioned that are taking research seriously. You know, they are really taking a futuristic outlook. They are designing future possible scenarios. And when you do that, you need a strong element of research. But that is what politics should bring in. Politics should not, in the electoral cycles, always just bring the local, standard, plain vanilla electoral promises. It should be able to help build the future in terms of how do we design a new society that is much more complex, that is able to support various issues, whether it is competition, whether it is a proper healthcare system for all, or whether it is a population that is able to absorb its graduates with pay to the economy. So you need politics that is really seriously embellish itself towards moving the society from being linear towards a very complex society. And that speaks to everything, whether it is support research in energy so that we can answer the real question as to how do we become energy secure, you know, beyond the narrative of don't go the nuclear way, don't do green hydrogen. That's what you really need, is for us to take research through political leverage seriously. So the manifestos must speak to these realities. And those that takes power must be able to drive the future narrative through research. That's very important.
Okay, great. Maybe the other aspect that I think from especially from our last guest that we had, they were of the view that sometimes it's the reason why politicians aren't particularly interested in the research or in the research papers that they are produced. It's probably because of the language in which the way they are written and in the setup in which the research is published. But how do we then take what you usually have as academic, strictly academic, and translate that into something that politicians and policymakers would ideally accept and introduce into their policy setting? scheme of things.
Okay, let's just get to the practical issues.
Yeah.
So if you look into the government space, there's a lot of research that happens there, whether it is through donor funding or through projects that may be funded through the budget. The question then is, are the officials in the system capacitated enough to translate the findings into a policy or into a strategy or even to a new program that support our society to evolve towards complexity? That's one question.
Yeah.
So the politicians, in my perspective, remember through parliament, we approved the budget. So it's also very undue to basically say they don't understand the language. No, there is research, say, on beef value chain that has been in the budget for some time. There are policy outcomes. There is research on, when we had this big discussion around the red line, we saw several papers that have been done over the years. The question was then, whose mandate is it to ensure that that becomes into a proposition to become a policy? Not necessarily to say it's the language.
Yeah.
So it cuts both ways, you know. So those of us who are at the cold face of doing this policy work or the research work should be able to become very adept in having the skills to translate it into policy. Similarly, when you are dealing with donors, a lot of research work gets through there. The question is, how do you, in the ministry, for example, extrapolate those findings so that it fits your nation's growth trajectory? Or so there's a lot of things, because I wouldn't really want to blame only the politicians, because also there are also opportunities for those that are opportunistic. You know, they just see it as a research to, I'm given this tender just to do a consultancy on the performance of SOEs. But you didn't put your heart in it because you don't appreciate that if we fix a certain SOE, that particular road now will go to my village. If we fix a certain SOE, all of us will be able to walk into a public hospital, get the best medicine, medical care, eat proper food. So how do we also, those of us that are at the cold face of this work, actually take what is being done seriously or appreciate what is being done? So that's my take in terms of those issues.
Yeah. Thank you, Doc. If you're watching, you still on the SAS Knowledge Repository. Here we're really trying to establish the importance of research in a Namibian setting and even beyond. Doctor, I still want us to go back into the appreciating of research part and how this research should ideally be packaged. But if it were to take a form, and I'd like if Doctor could give me an example here. One aspect, or say one research that had really translated from it being just a research paper that few or more researchers have been particularly interested in a particular problem, how did they translate that all the way through either to a particular policy, maybe it's legislation, or straight down to even a commodity?
The work that we did earlier around environmental economics is a pure good example of what it means when you add value to a sector that is previously. I did a paper at that time saying that economics of non-markets, because that there was no market for, say, the value of an elephant or the overall value of trophy hunting. So one of our first papers was the economics of trophy hunting in Namibia, because when, for example, during that time, when we were in the Ministry of Environment, when budget time comes, they were basically seeing you as a component of people that are looking after animals, right? Wild animals. They didn't see the value of how much it means for a tourist to travel from the US, paying tickets, land into the airport, pay whatever fees they have to pay, take a shuttle, go sleep in a hotel, take another shuttle to Etosha or wherever they have a trophy to hunt. Thereafter, then pay a taxidermologist and then drive back to Windhoek or somewhere else. So that economic value was never captured in terms of budget discussions as to why are we asking for an extra 100 Namibian dollar to ensure that the park ranger has at least boots and a t-shirt or a proper ventilated car to look after those animals. So we did a lot of research that basically then became the value of natural value of our wildlife. And as you know, that has really culminated even in environmental fiscal reforms. The park entrance fees were then improved because, you know, people just used to think that, yeah, paying a $10 at Tosha Park is adequate, but you had to show the value as well as the cost of why we need to keep this asset alive and the animal as the biological assets in there. So environmental fiscal reform, as you know, became quite big in Namibia. It led to even these emission taxes that you nowadays pay on cars. It leads to the tourism value to be appreciated. We also did satellite tourism accounts ultimately, that then at least started showing those figures that people until today continue showing that tourism contributed to 10% of GDP. It was based on those earliest tourism satellite accounts that we did. So that's really what it is.
Yeah. Okay, impressive. And I think, but in so doing, obviously, there are some, I like to call them pitfalls.
Yeah.
That sometimes you do wonderful research, proper recommendations, but it's not usually accepted. Is it the thing of those that are ideally supposed to then run on the next step with that particular research, that they don't want those recommendations to be implemented, or is there a particular pitfall maybe that researchers, or an oversight that researchers sometimes run, and they have their researchers not considered?
Yeah, well, it depends. It depends on does your institution has a research agenda? That's the first thing always. With the ministry or the agency or the SOE or the private sector department, do they have a research agenda? Do they see value in doing that research? And or is it just a matter of we found this budget line in there, and every year we just have to ask for an extra million, and you know, or is it the opportunist that comes in and say, I need to give that 1 million contract to Lazarus, and we come up with a topic that it is that we do. But I think Namibia, as I'm saying, it's now calling for complexity of issues that are seriously demanding research to really be taken seriously. I've mentioned the mental health issues. I've mentioned the fact that we are now asking ourselves the hard question around our energy, stability, supply, and our security, our industrialization. What do we really want to do about it? But also, one thing that maybe becomes a bit of a pitfall is that a lot of the research out there is what I term the gray literature. So if you look into the academia, you see this trend where everybody does a thesis, but basically those things just become, you know, just thesis on the shelves.
Yeah.
And then in the formal markets, research is lucrative for me personally because I get some money, but I'm not necessarily doing something in order for the sake of societal progress. So there's a huge disconnect there, but there's quite a lot of money floating from donors and all of that. And so what you end up with is that the disconnect doesn't allow the policymaker to be able to appreciate what is being done here, because when they do come down or scale down, they don't find a valuable product. The product is not valuable. It's just gray literature. That's what we call it, you know. SOE employee satisfaction. But when you really look in terms of what was done in that M thesis, really it is just off the shelf product that just basically I needed to do this so I can get my degree and get a job or whatever it is. So it's not really for the real cause of inquiry to solve, as I said earlier, societal and economy issues. But as I said, the questions are now being asked around us. What do you do with your critical raw minerals? What do you do with your water scarcity issues? How do you turn around the mines to start adding value to your society? And what do you do with the oil and gas? And because of that linearity that I mentioned, it's so easy that if you go down even to the MSMEs that have been benefiting it's Namibian registered entities, but they are owned by South Africans.
Yeah.
So these are the realities where research could have helped us to really start even have a proper MSME policy that really drives ownership and local content provisions that really support us, me and you, to be able to partake in our economy. But that's where we are. Yeah.
And I think I like what you spoken to, especially around grey literature. And I know
it's not said with any derision. It's a reality.
Yeah. And I know I had my previous guest. One of them was a professor. She teaches at UNAM, and she indicated that sometimes I think, like you indicated, people just do. I need to finish this course. There's a thesis to it. Let me finish it, and then I go on and get my promotion at work. But it's never really about solving a particular problem in society. And then we are drawing towards the very end. And Doctor, I've got 3 more questions.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
So how do, it could be either be government or public sector, how do we then create that link? Obviously, private sector and the public sector and government, they have issues that they want attended to.
Yeah.
And the academia is heavily involved in the research portion.
Yeah.
How do we make that connection?
I think the issue lies in incentives.
Yeah.
How do you incentivize those that are in academia to be able to nudge their students that they are supervising to come up with valuable research instead of grey literature? How do we incentivize government officials or even the professors themselves that makes a living from consultancy contracts to be able to drive the narrative within that consultancy to support the complexity development of our society? How do we incentivize the policymakers to adhere to international standards that at least, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think is it 3% or 1.5? No, 1%,
1%
of your GDP to go towards R&D. How do we incentivize especially the clusters that are in education, be it in the private sector, be it in the public sector, to really push for Namibian journals to be supported, bringing the private sector to advertise in those journals, even if nowadays they are electronic, but those are the basic things that we need to start pushing towards making research relevant for ourselves. How do we bring in the private sector and say, look, your corporate social responsibility, we know perhaps maybe some of it is maybe predetermined from Pretoria, Joburg, and Cape Town.
Yeah.
But how do you at least ask for a cut that can support our research and endeavors here? Yes, of course, giving out a few blankets and some maize meal as part of your CSR is good, but maybe also think of other things that can help the society to evolve. The other one is much more controversial, and but there are certain areas or niche areas where we really are supposed to be the forerunners in research. But there you really need serious, how should I say, what is the best word now? but you just need to be bold.
Yeah.
Look at marine diamond. Namibia is actually the forerunner in that research, but our research capacity sits in Cape Town. So I wouldn't want to say what should have happened, but yeah, so there are certain things that you really need to give yourself some ability to say, but hang on, we should be able to be the forerunners, and that capacity should be here, so that we are able to attract more funding, more international cooperation, and we are able then to leverage on that and sell out to the rest of the world how to mine diamonds in the sea. So those are the type of things that your research agenda, your national research agenda, in my view, should look in terms of supporting the research development of our country.
Okay.
But I hope what I said will not lead me to trouble.
No. Hopefully not.
It's nothing.
Yeah. I think towards the very last end, Doctor, what would you say, top of your mind, maybe 2 or 3 things could be considered priorities for research, particularly especially for the Namibian researchers? 2 or 3 things.
There's a lot of things because our country is, as I said, faced with myriad of challenges. But challenges basically calls for solutions. So if you look on the societal side of things, we have serious challenges of mental health, unemployment, the likes. If you look in the project management space, we have a lot of issues around how to basically manage a project. Because we get all these myriad of good projects, but then we are not able to manage them to completion, and we tend to get help. So all of that. So basic principles around or research around project management within the Namibian context is quite key, be it in the public or private sector. On the economic side, that's really quite a lot of things that we need to look into. I've already mentioned aspects of energy security for us, which is critical in my view. How do we push the industrialization agenda? If you go to the natural resources side, we still have the issues around the mining value addition issue. We are still struggling. How do we really capture more value? And also, obviously, the new hydrocarbons, because hydrocarbons basically gives you maybe a window space of around 25 years, because the world is moving towards net zero. So you really have a very limited space to optimize on that opportunity. On the education side, aspects such as free education, very important. Tracing of students, graduates, creating new economies that can absorb them. IT is very important because we haven't really seen good research around how do we adopt AI, for example, and how can we use it effectively. So in Namibia, we have, as I said, a myriad opportunities of taking research and helping us optimize in our niche areas, but we are just not having that coherence around it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Doc. And as a tradition, we always have this very last question.
Yeah.
And ideally is to allow the conversation to continue.
Yeah.
And that is, who do you think we should have next in our next episode?
Was your first one an academic?
Yeah, so the first one was somebody from the academia and also from the Namibia Research.
Okay.
NCRST.
Okay. Now the next one we should be someone from the private sector. I'm from the public sector, so we need someone from the private sector.
Yeah.
But that is at the cold face of research or in a natural resources sector, because that's really where we need to see what are the issues or the energy side of things. But I wouldn't mention a name. But
you could mention a name.
I've provided some guidance. The nation can also suggest. Yeah. I'm a Democrat by tradition through my ancestors. Yeah.
Thank you so much, for this conversation. We have come to the end of today's episode. Thank you to all our viewers for joining us as well. And thank you, Doc, so much for providing these valuable insights. We highly appreciate your insights. And to our sponsors for this particular video, the NMT Media Foundation, thank you so much for providing the studio space. We highly appreciate it. And we will continue to engage and have these conversations around the importance of research. I think what I want to see and I think it goes back to our first episode, the professor there had indicated that research is not even a luxury. It's a necessity. We can't do without it.
Yeah.
So we'll continue amplifying the importance of research and bringing you guests that would really speak to this particular important issue. Doc, thank you so much.
It's not a necessity.
Yeah.
It's actually your underlying pillar for value add. Because without research, you won't know how to improve your product or improve your society or your system ways of thinking. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
You have to do research. Yeah. You have to do research on your potential wives.
Thank you, Doc.